If you live in the real world, you want to hear what Dr. Bruce Rubenstein has to say.
If you live in the spiritual world, you will want to hear what Rabbi Shea has to say.
We may agree,
And we may disagree.
but you want to hear both views.
So let's get right to it.
With Yom Kippur coming our way, perhaps the holiest day of the year, a day that people focus on and think about with preparation throughout the month of Elul, we go to a day of forgiveness. Today's topic is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Bruce, what can you say as an opening statement about forgiveness?
What do you forgive me for in this last year?
In another, I forgive you for everything. No. I actually tell people when they say you're forgiven, I said, I'm not upset to begin with. You can only forgive if you feel that you were insulted and something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, if we can somehow be above it and you don't get upset, then do you need forgiveness? And then the question is, with God, do we need forgiveness? Because we're always doing things wrong. If God knows our limitations, does he in fact get upset with us? And should we ask for forgiveness? But that's the question to the rabbi.
Yeah, you ask him later. For now, curious, do you happen to know the etymology of the word forgive? Like what it means? Where it comes from?
Well, forgive, I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, right. Give, it's from Old English. It's to give. You're giving someone something, right? What are you giving them? When you forgive, what are you giving them? Did you ever think about that?
When I forgive someone, I guess I'm giving them a variety of things. First of all, well, the word teshuva in Hebrew and in the concept of teshuva in Hebrew is really return. Not so much forgiveness as much as return. So I'm returning to the state and relationship that we had before you did something wrong, before you wronged me, before you upset me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I kind of understand it a little differently. I think that what we're giving, if we're talking about forgiving someone else, because this concept can apply to yourself, to forgive oneself for what somebody did, which also is something that should be occupying our minds on Yom Kippur. But I think in part what we're giving someone is pardon. Yeah? If you go to the Hebrew, right? Ani solech otcha, I pardon you, I forgive you, sort of thing, right? In psychology, we don't really use the word forgiveness. We talk more about the concept of letting go of something. Whether it's a negative feeling towards another individual or whether it's a negative feeling towards yourself. And if you think...
So what happens if my parent calls me and they're upset with me, or a friend of mine I wronged? Where is letting go versus forgiveness? Or am I to let go?
If you think about it, if you let go, then there's no value, there's no point in forgiveness. Because once you let go, it's no longer part of your experience or your mental world or your emotional world.
So in me seeking forgiveness, what I'm really looking for is for the other person to let go.
No. I think that the person who, we started off talking about forgiving someone or forgiving yourself. My point was that if you let go, there's no point then in forgiveness because it's no longer a part of your experience. You're posing another question. You seek forgiveness from someone else, which would necessarily then mean or require that person let go of whatever is potentially bothering them about you or what you did. Two separate things, right?
Well, Yom Kippur, the real theme, remember, people within our community, throughout the 30 days of the month of Elul, 29 days, and then Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're all consumed about forgiveness. God forgiving us for the wrongdoing. So is that somewhat self-imposed, that anxiety or being upset? Or
part of the human experience, right? Otherwise, there would be no 29 days of Elul, there would be no Yom Kippur if we were not prone to do these things, which causes the discomfort in us and then hence motivates us to seek forgiveness. Yeah? The notion of seeking forgiveness from God is purely a religious one. That's a religious topic. It's between you and your Maker.
And I think then it would be very simple. I know I did something wrong. I want God to forgive me. I'm then going to do tshuva, and I believe that I have been forgiven.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about when I wronged another person.
Right. So if you're talking about from the perspective of seeking or wanting forgiveness from someone who I did something wrong to or I wronged, I mean, there are two options. Sometimes there's no place to make recompense or rectify. Perhaps you did something to someone and the person has simply decided that they want nothing further to do with you. Then you just have to let go, in this case, forgive yourself and let go of the guilt, because it's not serving anything. It's not propagating a relationship between the two of you as such. If you're talking about self-forgiveness, right? Something that we did that didn't necessarily cause harm to someone else, but to ourselves, or something that bothers us, I think we have no other choice but to try to go down that path, to let it go, and then or forgive ourselves, however you want to look at it, because things tend to. Do you recall? I think it was described in Maimonides' book Guide to the Perplexed, when he talked about this notion of the universe being these spheres that were constantly turning around, like circles. Our minds are very much like that. Something will happen, and it will just keep on churning over and over and over and over.
And that's normal. Fact that we're...
Yeah, no, it's very normal. I wish we would recognize it for what it was, because some people, they'll come and they'll say, I can't get this very negative, bothersome thought out of my mind. And the fact is that just because it keeps churning doesn't mean it has more importance. It just simply churns. Yeah, it just simply turns. Yeah. Ironically, the more we try to distract ourselves from it, the more energy we give it, actually. Yeah. So I think the challenge at that point is to simply, in a calm mode, recognize it, recognize that it's there, and then try to turn our attentions to more positive things, which I'm sure has similarity to the types of counsel that you would give from a rabbinic perspective, in terms of telling someone, okay, something negative happened. There's not a lot of utility in going over that. What happened? Let's turn our attention to something positive and focus on that.
In our discussion, actually, something comes to mind.
Sure.
The Alter Rebbe in Ageres HaTshuva, I believe it's chapter 11, talks about this concept that we do things wrong and we say, ask God forgiveness. And constantly, we're asking God forgiveness 3 times a day. And we can continue doing things wrong, and yet we're confident that God is going to forgive us. Mm-hmm. And I think that really works very well, like you say, between man and God. But perhaps between man and man, a lot has to do with simply letting go. Mm-hmm. And people who come into my office sometimes to get advice, I find they're not really talking necessarily about the other person forgiving them, mm-hmm. as much as they're talking about the anger or disappointment that was done to them, or not the anger, the disappointment was done to them, and therefore they're angry. And the real question is, in a nutshell, what can you tell somebody? What is the best and easiest way to let go?
Yes. Well, by making the following points. Number one, we can't change the past. What happened, happened. People ironically will dig and analyze and search and try to find new angles at looking at what happened under the assumption that maybe they're gonna turn over a stone and find some new aspect that they can go and try to correct. But you can't correct what happened in the past, for sure. Next thing is what I already mentioned. Don't fight with the recurrence of this thought in your mind, this memory of what happened. You're just giving it more energy that way, right? Accept that it's there. Put yourself into a calmer state of mind, and then remind yourself of not what you did wrong, but where you want to go. What value do you want to pursue? And do something very concrete to pursue that value.
And what about the thought or wanting that that person feels regret or that person somehow apologized to me? How do I soften that?
That you want someone to apologize to you?
I'm upset. What I'm not letting go is because you wronged me. I want you to know, I want to know that you know you wronged me. Yeah. I want you to ask forgiveness. That's so many times, particularly in family situations. That's what we're sitting saying. No, I want the person there. I say, but it happened. It's over. You're thinking about it. They not to them. It may be
they're not bothered.
Right. But
it's interesting in 30 years of experience, and I've heard this many, many times, and I've heard stories of people who have been wronged legitimately. And they seek out, usually it's in the form of something their parents did to them. And they want somebody, their parent or someone, to come and apologize. Acknowledge what they did and apologize under the assumption that that's going to make them feel better. And in rare instances, the person comes and makes the apology. And guess what happens?
Nothing.
Nicht.
Right.
Doesn't make them feel better at all. Because
so you think it's just a mishigas, or I would say it's the Yetzer Hara just creating things in your mind. Perhaps that's why when people say, I said, listen, if you put in the God factor that you were wronged and say God wanted you or this to happen, God was in control, I think you can let go a lot easier.
I would hope that people could find that peace through their relationship with God. Not everyone can. Not everyone can. In those cases, the primary goal is to demonstrate to the person that really this is like one of those spheres that Maimonides was describing. It simply is going around and around and around and around and around. It's serving no purpose, right? It's just making that person feel badly over a period of time, and to demonstrate to them that there's no utility that's going to come from anything that they can do related to what happened, whenever in the past, right? And to stop seeking some type of panacea in the form of someone forgiving them or them forgiving another person or not. And again, focus on peace, focus on their own values, and most importantly, focusing on peace of mind.
So if I can say it a little bit differently, the apology from the other person is not really what changes. It's your attitude towards that person that changes. You can change that attitude anyways. And therefore, you're in control and you can let go.
Well, maybe it's changing the attitude towards yourself, that you're not a person who sits and holds on to grudges for 10, 20, 30 years, or even a few days, right? That you learn how to let go much more quickly.
I still say if we focus on God and recognize what took place yesterday, all 10 years ago, God was in control, I think it lets us realize that it wasn't me, it wasn't them, I don't take it so personal. It happened, it was for the best. And particularly if people come into your office and say something happened so many years ago, I think the first question is, what did you learn from it? Did you in fact take a lesson from it? Because if you did, hey, that's why it had to happen. It may have been a blessing in disguise.
You remind me of the saying that when someone dates someone and then ends up marrying them, they say to them, listen, you're either going to be my greatest blessing or my greatest lesson, right?
Yeah.
So,
Or both.
or both.
Or both.
Or both, absolutely. Look, some people are more hot-headed than others, right? Some people hold on to things much longer than others. But I think if you have very strong spiritual base, as you say, I do think that you can use your relationship with God to then apply it to the relationship with others. There are instances where people are terribly wronged or do things themselves which are terribly wrong, which actually undermines and weakens their connection with God. At those times, I think in those instances, one must not battle it, accept the fact that the thought is there, and then try to get to a calm state of mind where they can remind themselves of what is important in a positive way moving forward and pursue that. I don't think we have any other choice.
And if you can take a lesson from it, that would be the best.
Always. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the day of Yom Kippur, let's do the following. Let's ask God for forgiveness. Let's be confident that He will forgive us. So as far as that, you can move on. You can have a new slate. You can make your changes that you need to make. As far as other people, first thing is let go. Understand that it's not about the forgiveness as much as you letting go. Not being upset with yourself or with that other person. In most cases, that other person may have moved on anyways. So it's about time that you move on as well.
Yeah.
And see if any lessons can be learned to make changes. Or, most of all, now that you were treated that way, how does it help you treat others?
Treat others. Absolutely. I have to imagine you've also had the experience where you've heard people tell you that they perhaps offended they have a memory of having offended someone 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and then they run into the person so many years later. They say, hey, I really want to let you know I still feel badly. And the other person doesn't even remember what happened. So with that, I say amen to what you said. And if anyone would like to contact us with a question or comment, they can do so by...
On the screen, you can email us if you have any questions for further information and for further programs. Please do come back. You have listened to the program on forgiveness, and we hope to see you very soon on our next episode.
Amen.